Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So I think it was last year that I did the plant care tips that we've heard in the community and whether I agree or disagree with them, and I released two parts. They were both very long videos and was like, oh, part 3 is coming soon, because I had like a whole list that I wanted to go through and I just never got to it. I was like cleaning up my notes in my computer and I saw this whole little like cheat sheet and I was like, this doesn't even look familiar, and I was like, oh, maybe that's because I completely forgot to film part 3. So we're here several months later with part 3, just to kind of refresh your memory. I essentially put out like a question box on my Instagram and was like, what are some care tips and tricks that you've heard like within the plant space that whether you agree or disagree with it or not, like I just want to hear them. So in part 1 and 2, I kind of went through a few points, and I will link those 2 videos in the description. So part 3 is kind of just like the remainder of them. So I don't think this video is going to be as long as the other 2, but we still have quite a few to get through today. While I'm doing this, I'm going to be repotting some plants that need to be repotted, and I'm just kind of like in the crunch time right now, trying to get everything set. Instead of trying to like repot through spring, I kind of want to get everybody who needs to be repotted already in their new plants so that throughout spring they can continue to grow even like stronger and larger. That's the hope, at least. So there's still like, I don't know, maybe like 20 something plants that need some attention, and I think I've got like maybe 8 today. So as usual, I'm going to go through the roster so that I don't have to like interrupt and introduce the plant. I'm just going to kind of give you the rundown from the beginning, and then that way we can just like get through this chat over the next hour or so. First plant is this Anthurium burle. I think that's the name. Actually has dock block lineage. I completely thought this was just like one of those Anthurium silver blush or crystal hope, you know, like that whole little family of plants. I actually got this from Amanda, but I like whatever it is. It's so beautiful. I love it very much. It's just completely sort of outgrown this little dusty pot situation. There's a lot of exposed stem, so I just want to get this into some fresh pond, a taller vessel so that it doesn't dry out as fast. I'd love to try and get some roots along the stem, and like the leaves, they don't look terrible like in comparison to some of my Anthurium, which look like absolute horse crap. This isn't too bad, but it's sort of always like on the wilty side or like the droopy side because it's always dry. I water this maybe twice a week and I just can't seem to keep up with it. So I think getting it into a deeper vessel is going to help, and then also submerging some of the stem. So this is number 1. Plant number 2 is another Amanda plant. This one is, I believe, a philodendron Scottmorianum crossed with a 69686, or maybe the reverse. I'm not 100% sure what this looks like in maturity. Right now it's sort of looking like a philodendron burle marx. It just kind of looks, I mean, if I saw this plant and someone was selling it, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's a burle marx, right? But it's not. I mean, like, look at the growth pattern. It's completely different than a burle marx, but in like its juvenile state, I feel like that's like the best plant that I can compare it to. Both the Scottmorianum and the 69686 both have an elongated leaf. The 69686 has like the very sort of long, wide, who's that Disney character? Goofy? Like goofy ears. And then the Scottmorianum is more like a Billy, I think. I'll actually put in both, not the parents, but actually I think I do have the parent plants. So I'll put it in here from Amanda. So I'm just really excited to see what this looks like. This sort of hybrid is right up my alley. You guys know that I love the long leaf philodendrons, especially if they've got cute little lobes. So we're just trucking along here. It's actually grown a lot since I've gotten it. Like when I received it, it just had these little tiny leaves, so you couldn't really tell what it was. But now it's sort of starting to gain a little bit more like features from its parents. You can see it does have a pretty like gnarly case of spider mites. The mites in my tent are so bad right now. I'm gonna have to stock up on predatories before California, but despite being attacked by spider mites, it's actually growing really well. It's just in a tree fern fiber mix and it dries out so fast, but it's really rooted in here now. So I think I'm gonna be moving this again to a larger vessel, no drainage, and probably just straight soil. I don't want to release too much of the humidity in here, so I'm going to keep it closed for now, just because I've got some aerial roots here that have started that I would love to get secured on a pole right away, and I don't want it to crisp up. But what you're looking at is a very humid philodendron gigas, and that's because after I took it home from North Shore Tropicals, this started as a prop bin propagation, and it was just used to 100% humidity all the time. I took it home from her shop. It was sitting outside of my plant room for like 2 days and it just completely like withered. It actually started looking really sad as soon as I took it home from North Shore. It was sitting on my passenger seat and I just looked at it and it was just so floppy. So I probably should have domed it like as I took it home, but it was fine because I restarted really the whole thing, got it rerooted, and now it's hard to see, but there are some roots along this stem, so I can get it onto a pole straight away. My goal is to try and size this up. I would love a big gigas. I think a big gigas is really beautiful and underrated. It has that really dark leaf with sort of like a purplish bluish iridescence to it, and it's really unlike any of these like long leaf philodendrons that you see. It has like this Eeyore leaf that's just so endearing and so cute, but I think many people don't grow this plant because I don't know if you find this to be you know, your experience, but I find the gigas to be a pretty challenging plant to grow. I feel like once it hits a certain maturity level, it gets a little bit more low maintenance as long as you like maintain like the watering and maybe the pole. But as a young plant, I feel like you have to be really good about making sure you're not letting it dry out, making sure you're giving it like good conditions, meaning light and something to climb. I think that's kind of the two most important things with the gigas. Before, with my first gigas, which I have no clue where it went, I did start to see some size growth and then the plant disappeared. It's one of the greatest mysteries of my life. Like, I actually started getting some good size on it, and then it kind of like reverted back because it ran out of pole. And it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I've got to like really handle this or else I'm gonna go too far back. Looked for the plant, it was gone. I even scoured, I spent maybe like an hour and a half on my YouTube just trying to figure out if I have it on camera, like, oh, this plant died, or like, I'm gonna throw this plant out, but I can't. First of all, I can't find anything. I can't remember ever throwing it out. So if you guys know what happens to my gigas, if it is on this channel for whatever reason, please let me know, because it's one of those things that like I think about randomly. I'm like, where the hell did that plant go? And it's not like it was just like in a little cup or something. It was like fully on a pole and everything. It was like a full plant. So it really honestly beats me. The next one is the biggest plant I'm repotting today, and that is my Philodendron gloriosum. I'm actually repotting it sort of forcefully. This is a plant that has been doing really well, I would say, despite also having spider mites. But in terms of just the growth, like historically with this form of gloriosum, I just have not had any luck really keeping more than like 2 leaves on a plant. And it's been so like well established in this pot. I feel like it's got like a really good ecosystem down there, and I'm super hesitant to disturb it, but I have to because it's at the edge. It's at the edge of the pot now, so I can see this. The cataphyll, sorry, is completely like bending. It's like at an absolute 90-degree angle, like really unnaturally. I've actually never had this happen before because I'm usually pretty good about at least cutting a hole open here to allow it to like, you know, stretch freely, or I repot it before it gets to that point. So this one is really pushing the limits, and I just need to get it out of here. I really don't want to have to chop off any leaves because I don't know, I kind of like how big and bushy it is now. But the stem is really long. I don't have any other vessel besides this one inside of it to put it in, so we might have to do a little bit of chopping today. Yeah, I just treated this one for spider mites again, so I think she is ready for a repot. This one hopefully should be pretty easy peasy. This one needed to be repotted a long freaking time ago. I think I got this almost a year ago now. I think so. I think I got this shortly before my California trip last summer, and it's been in this really sort of whatchamacall hydrophobic, mostly like core, I can never say that, substrate or medium, and it dries out so fast, which is why I actually have it in a no drainage vessel so that like I can contain the roots in there and like hold in some of that moisture a little bit longer. Despite the fact that it gets dry really fast, it's grown a lot. I've given it a few haircuts. I'm probably gonna give it another haircut now because this is not typically how I like to grow my micans. I usually try and chop it before like one strand gets like a lot more leggy than another. So I'll probably chop these longer ones down here so that we can get something a little bit bushier. But yeah, this one is gonna be a soil transfer or soil to soil transfer. Not gonna do anything crazy. I really just want to get it into some nutrient rich soil and a larger vessel so that it doesn't dry out so fast. Second to last one is one I'm extremely nervous about. So this is my Elaphoglossa metallicum. I had a few very sassy people really upset at me for chopping off all of those black roots when I imported it. And I'm just gonna quickly say this. The things that I do to my plants really shouldn't affect you as much as it does, and I'm sorry that it does, but like I feel like you need to detach yourself from the fact that these are my plants and not yours. I think it would be different if I was going into your house and chopping off all your roots. That's completely different, but if I don't like the way roots look, I chop them off and I would rather start over. Heart racing. Something fell in the sink. That's what I get for piling my dishes. What was I saying? Man, I was in the middle of a spicy rant. Anyway, I chop roots. I'm a root chopper. I have friends who have been in this hobby for decades and they root chop and it's gonna be okay. It's fine. So I chopped off all the roots. I had never owned this plant before, so I was super nervous about what would happen. But I finally have like a really good root system. Now I will say the roots are black. They're black just as they were when I imported it, but I can see that there's this layer of like micro fuzz around the roots, and they also have like these light yellow tips. So these look way more alive than the ones that I got when I imported it, because I don't know if you guys watched that import video, but the substrate was bone dry. There was not like an inch, there wasn't a droplet of moisture in the moss. And they just, to me, they felt dead, they looked dead. And I am glad that I started over because now we have like a good, I would say, like base to work with. I don't see any new growth points really sort of waking up. Not really expecting anything anytime soon until more of these roots form. I think that we're just focusing on this right now, which is totally fine with me. I can see that this leaf is starting to yellow slightly bit more every day, but totally fine again. And I think that I'm gonna be growing this one in pon. I was going back and forth whether I wanted to do maybe like a soil tree fern fiber mix or a pon, but I'm kind of leaning more towards pon just because this has been water rooted. I also may do like a tree fern fiber pon mix, maybe heavier on the pon. I'm not 100% sure yet. We're gonna kind of just like follow our heart as we get there, but yes, it is finally time for this Elaphoglossum to get some new pants. And then last but certainly not least, my burle Marx's Flame is gonna be another one that I repot today, and that's because it's kind of grown out of control in this tree fern fiber mix. I know that it's not completely root bound, it actually has plenty of room to grow, but for this plant specifically, I don't want it to get too root bound in here just because I want the transition to be a little bit less stressful. So if I have to like wrestle with roots, that's probably going to cause it more undue stress. So I'm just choosing to do it sooner than later. And also I can see this little belly on the top leaf sort of swelling. So That's how you can kind of tell that it's got something on the way. Every time that you get a new leaf, I mean, a lot of you are going to know this, but anytime you get a new leaf on a monstera, it already has kind of, you know, a little pouch for the new leaf to come in. But it's not until it really starts changing color like this, where it turns like a light green, and you can tell it's just a little bit swollen and it's like bulging, that something is about to come. So I want to make sure to get this repotted and actually on a pole before the new addition arrives. So hopefully we can do more good than bad today. I think I'm gonna opt for a tree fern fiber soil mix for the Burle Marx's Flame. Some people had recommended that I use pon, but I don't know why. My instinct with monsteras is just to use soil. I actually have, I would say, most of my monsteras in soil, and I've just had really good luck and experience with it, so I just kind of stick to what works. So those are all the plants that I'm going to be repotting today. Hopefully I can get everything done. It's kind of a ambitious repot, I would say, but I'm just going to prep some pon and prep some soil, and then I'm just going to take a table out here and we're going to work out here because I don't know, I haven't really loved being in my plant room lately. It's a little bit, I don't know, I get a little bit claustrophobic in there sometimes, especially when I do repots, so I kind of just want to be out here in the open. I've got the AC right in front of me, and I think it'll just be a better time. So yeah, let's get started. I think I'm going to start with this Anthurium burle, just because I think it's the only one that I'm getting into pon. Did I say if I was going to put my gigas in pon? Well, I think this is my only pon plant, maybe. I'm assuming that the root system is healthy, but probably some that have dry rot. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, let's just get into the first assumption, not assumption. Which video is this? Let's talk about the first tip. So just to quickly preface this, this is just my opinion, of course. I do the whole spiel in part 1, and I even think part 2. Whatever works for you, works for you. Whatever tips and tricks help you through this journey, by all means, you do it. But these are just my opinions. And what does my opinion matter in the grand scheme of things? So the first thing that we're going to talk about are hoyas. So this is going to be a department that I am not confident in for sure. I feel like of all the plants that I own, I understand my hoyas the least in terms of care, in terms of like what they are. I barely even know the IDs, but especially when it comes to like their tendencies and how they grow in the wild and the best care for them, I am not your girl for that department. So just take everything I say for the next couple minutes with a grain of salt. So the first tip is to let them dry out to bloom. I've only actually ever had, I think, 2 of my hoyas bloom, and I will say with full confidence that I do tend to allow my hoyas to dry out, only because a lot of them are in really small vessels, mostly in pon, and my small vessel pon plants dry out so stinking fast no matter where they are in the house. It doesn't matter if it's in a greenhouse, doesn't matter if it's out here on the shelf, they just dry out really fast. So yeah, I mean, I would believe that because all of the 2 hoyas that I got to bloom, they were always very dry. And I've actually heard this tip being mentioned before, that like, or essentially if you allow them to dry to a point where it's getting stressed, it actually pushes out not only flowers, but growth points. Not just from like the tip of like wherever that little runner guy is, but like from the base of it, like along the stem. I just am not the type of plant parent to purposely allow my plant to get stressed. It's usually by accident. But I guess if you are the type of person who likes hoya flowers, then I guess that's like a happy accident for you. I personally do not enjoy the flowers on them. I don't like the smell. I don't like the way they look. So I would rather not have flowers, but I will say that my hoyas do tend to be on the drier side. So I guess based on my very limited knowledge and my I need a thingy, my bob. Sorry. Based on my limited knowledge and experience with hoyas, especially blooming hoyas, I have to say probably agree with this, just because in my observation, yeah, the ones that have blooms, they do tend to be on the drier side. But That is a very, very uncertain agree. If I had to give like an actual answer, the answer is I don't know. I have no clue. I have no idea what hoyas like, what they don't like. I just give them water when I remember. I fertilize them and just hope they don't die on me. Well, why am I putting all my mess here? I'm gonna try and stay organized. Let's see how well I do. Okay, the next thing with hoyas is do the taco test for watering hoyas. This one, okay, I heard this one going around Instagram specifically, and this one terrified me. The thought of bending any of my hoyas like a taco makes me want to scream. Like, even if I just like not like hit it the wrong way, or you know, I just like go to like admire a leaf and I just crack its neck, it's like just bleeds that white sap. I guess I don't know if it's like all the varieties of hoyas that I own, but whenever I go and try and like manipulate the leaves or like go do a repot and I'm like restyling the leaves, I always have so many accidents. I always make it bleed so much. So the thought of just like literally going up to my hoya and just like bending it like a taco to see if it's soft, I'm gonna say it's probably thirsty if you can bend your hoya like a taco. Only because I would say most hoyas are like really like, they're thicker leafed, you know, like there's really not many hoyas that have a thin leaf like this. So if you're able to bend your hoya leaf like a taco, I truly believe in my heart that yes, it needs water. But I am certainly not the type who would go around bending my hoyas in half. At least not on purpose. So for this one, I'm gonna say, yeah, agree. Or wait, what is this? Okay, hold on. Now that I'm actually like thinking about it, the taco test for watering hoya, does that mean unless you can actually bend it like a taco, then you shouldn't water it? Okay, I guess if that's what you're trying to say, then I would say disagree, because some of my hoya definitely show that they're thirsty, I think, before I could even fold it like a taco. Like a plant like my pachiclata, I don't think I'd even be able to fold that one like a taco, even if it was super thirsty. This one kind of confuses me, but I'm erring more on the side of I disagree. I agree to disagree that you should wait to allow your hoyas to fold like a taco before watering it. I feel like at the first sign that like the substrate looks like really dry, or like the leaves start looking a bit more wrinkled or like droopy, kind of like any other plant, that you should just go ahead and water it. But again, what do I know? I know jack crap about hoyas. And then the last little point in the hoya category, I don't want to do too many hoya questions or tips because again, I'm not the person to talk to about this. The last one is use brighter light for more splash on hoyas. I'm gonna actually go ahead and let you guys answer this one if you know the answer. I don't have the slightest clue. I feel like I don't have very many splashy hoyas. I don't think, like I have my my Hoya publicalyx, I have my Hoya obovata, Hoya carrii. Like I have a few that have splash, but I don't know. I feel like it's kind of just been regular splashiness in different lighting conditions, so I'm not 100% sure if that's true. I feel like one of you guys would definitely be able to answer this way better than I could. I talked about this in, I think it was my week of, was it my week of or my yucca video? I can't 100% remember, but this is my new favorite little scooper. What is this called? Shovel? This is not a shovel. Okay. Well, anyway, this is like my new favorite gardening tool. I really want to try and find one smaller. If I could find like, I know this is a handheld one, but if I could find one even smaller to help me with these smaller repots, because obviously this is made for like literal gardening outside, that would be amazing. I just really love this pointed tip, and it helps when you're like separating soil and trying to get like clumps like untangled. And I don't know, it's just nice. Like when you pack it in to the vessel, it really like sort of moves things around better than like the round tip thing. I knew I shouldn't have filmed today. I was editing all morning and like I just have had such a crazy week with work, and then I also worked at North Shore Tropicals 2 days this week, and so I've just been a little bit like all over the place, and so I like took everything out to film, and then I just was like, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do it, I'm so tired and delusional, and yeah, here we are. I'm like, I can't even get my words out. Oh, so here's the Anthurium burle. I think that it's going to be much happier in here. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I didn't use a lot of perlite in this pond. And that's because as we head into summer, I'm just kind of trying to make things a little less chunky because I want them to hold on to the water a little bit longer, just because everything's drying out really fast. I'm gonna be in California, I'm going other places, and I don't want to have to water too much. I don't want to have to, you know, the people that are going to care for my plants, I don't want them to have to come and water too much. So yeah, I'm going a little bit chunkier on the pond this time, but it still has a good amount of perlite. I'd say it's pretty balanced, but typically I would add more perlite than this. Now the question is, do I want to repot anything else in pond before I get this out of here? I don't know why. Okay, you know what? I'm going to call Alice. Let's call Alice and have her figure this out. She's gonna be like, why are you calling me? Just text me.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
What are you doing?
I'm cleaning my basement.
Oh, again?
Oh, it's like a mini day job.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're on camera. I'm filming.
Oh dear.
I'm filming, and I just needed you to make a decision for me.
Okay.
My philodendron gigas, it is rooted in moss right now. Do I move it to pond or soil? I could not make this decision on my own. I'm gonna need you to do it for me.
We're vacation prepping, the both of us.
Yeah.
So pond's not gonna stay wet as long.
So soil.
Right?
Yeah.
And like gigas is quite thirsty.
It is, and I'm putting a pole in it.
Yeah.
Soil?
Maybe, what if you did soil with a layer?
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew you were gonna say that. Yay! Okay, I just needed like confirmation. So I'm feeling good now. Because that's what I was thinking, but I was like, am I making the wrong choice?
Because I always grew my gigas in soil, and it grew so fast, but
yeah,
I forgot about it and it died.
well, I didn't forget about mine, and it disappeared, so.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Good luck
Have
cleaning.
fun.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye. All right, well, you heard the boss. She says soil, so we do soil. Now let me just put you on to these little, okay, I've shown these to you guys before, but I just restocked yesterday at North Shore. So this is leca, and they do look a bit different than the leca that I used to use, or I would say the leca that's most commonly sold. So this is, okay, I need to get close, whoa. This is what this leca looks like, and you can see sort of like how different each shape is. I actually really like this leca because it creates more air pockets in the vessel because it's not so uniformly shaped. Like when they're all sort of like smushed up against each other. Yeah, it's just all of the different weird shapes of them create larger air pockets. So that's why I like it. The second reason why I like it so much is because they're so much lighter than the pond I've used before. Like this literally feels as heavy as like a Cocoa Puff, like cereal. Like this box normally should be so heavy if it was filled with like my old leca. This one's so much lighter. So she does sell this. I don't know if she ships it to the States, but I think it's on her website, and you can also obviously get it in store. But yeah, I just feel like I am gonna have a hard time going back to the old leca once I've used this one. Anyway, that's my tangent. We're gonna start repotting my gigas now. I just wanna get this one out of the way because I gotta get it on a pole. And I'm gonna be using one of Lauren's clear moss poles in the size mini. I'll link it in the description as well. And I'm gonna be filling it with a tree fern fiber moss mix. That's kind of like my go-to now. I just feel like it makes things root a lot faster in the substrate, or it makes it root faster into the pole. It is easier to untangle when you need to like remove it from the pole, and I just like it a lot better than using a straight up moss pole. So, oh sorry, I didn't mean to flip you off. Next one, or the next topic that we're gonna jump into is variegation. So the first little tip is chop down a non-chimeric plant for more variegation, like the Thai or the Jose. So I have had no experience in terms of a Thai constellation sort of like reverting in variegation. I've also never had anything like a Jose Bueno revert on me as well. I don't know. This is another sort of department I'm not super well versed in, and that's because I'm not a huge variegation lover. I can probably remember off the top of my head all of the variegated plants I have in my collection, but I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm really just into like the green solid leaves. There's only a few plants that I have that are variegated, like Bar Hederaceum, Albo, Frydek, but nothing too crazy. You know, I'm not a huge variegation lover. So the reason why I wanted to include this little tidbit in the video, even though I felt like I had really nothing to contribute to it, is because I'd like to just like bring it up for conversation, because a lot of you guys do have good sort of back and forth in the comments, and there's a lot of you that watch my channel that are way more knowledgeable than me. Who knows why you even watch my channel given the information that you know, but I appreciate it. But just all that to say, I do think that like the comment section can be like a good resource for people. I need to wet this. It can be a good resource for people in terms of getting information. So I'm not going to answer this just because I have no freaking clue. But if you want to chime in the comments, please do. Second tip on variegation is chop down the stem to bring back variegation if there's none on the newer part of the stem. I do have more experience in this department, primarily with the Albos and the Monstera Adansonii variegated. I've had experience with plants with amazing variegation, and I've had experience with plants with really sort of up and down, unpredictable variegation. And in my experience throughout the whole thing, it's that on a plant that's chemically induced, like the Adansonii, like the Adansonii alba variegata, I have never had a variegated leaf come out of a stem that was green. So even if it came from a very super highly variegated mother plant, if like I did not have any white in the stem, I had no white on the leaves. No matter how much I chopped it back, no matter how much light I gave it, didn't matter. It always reverted once it ran out of white on the stem. That's one reason why I no longer have a variegated Adansonii. I just felt it was too unpredictable. It was too almost like stressful to try and keep up that variegation. I had the same experience with the Albo and the Aurea, and it was just a bad time. So I personally am just not a huge fan of those plants, but for this tip specifically, I'm going to agree with that. If you have a plant that reverts, if you chop it back down to a part of the stem that has variegation, you're gonna have a better chance of getting variegation. But it also, in my experience, depends where that axillary bud is located on the stem. Sometimes you'll have a stem that has like half, let's say like an Albo, has like half white and half green on the stem on one side of it, like let's say this side, and then on the other side of the stem it's like all green. If your axillary bud is on that side with the green, there is a chance that your new growth point is going to be all green. Whereas if it was on the side with the white and the green, you're gonna have variegation. But I have had props where it came out of like a green side with just like a streak, like the smallest, faintest streak of white, and I was able to get some white on it. I don't know if I have any examples. Let me go check really quick. So this is what I was talking about. Sorry, it's so hard to talk to you guys when I'm filming on this table. So here's what I was saying about the stem. So this is an elbow. You can see it's like a half moon. It's really nice. One side of the stem is green, whereas the other side has the white. So if you look at where this axillary bud is, you can see that it is primarily on the green part of the stem, but there's white here and it's really close and it almost kind of bleeds into it a little bit. So I wouldn't doubt if this one does have white in it, and I wouldn't doubt if it's like something that looks something like this. So I have another prop here. You can see this one is super, super low variegation. And if you look at the stem, it does have like a decent amount of white in it, and where the growth point is coming out of, it has green. If you looked at this plant when it wasn't chopped and you saw this stem, you would think, oh yeah, it probably has like a good amount of variegation on that leaf, but it doesn't. But this is a specimen that particularly puts out like a leaf like this, and then a leaf like this, and then a leaf like this, and then something like this with even more white. So it kind of like does the alternating thing. And then there's something like this where it's got green, half white. It has a little bit of sort of like striping of white down here. So this is the bottom leaf. This is the second to oldest leaf, or second to newest leaf, I guess. Mostly green, but then you have this one that has more white in it. And if you kind of notice like where these leaves are along this stem, so this is the green side and this is the white side. So this one has more white in it, has more white in the stem, and then this leaf grew out of like the more green side, more green. And then you can see here, this new growth point came out of like the white side. So you're gonna have more white here. So with chimerically induced plants, I would say, yeah, there's a huge correlation between what you see on the stem and what you're gonna see on the leaves. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like you can't make a 100% accurate assumption until the leaf comes out. That's just my opinion. It's always been really, really sort of a gamble and up in the air. Sometimes I see a stem where I'm like, oh, this one's not gonna have any variegation, and then it's like this most beautiful thing. And then I have stems like with the elbow Adansonii where it was like a highly variegated stem, and then I got like green. So yeah, just very sort of like all over the place. But in terms of this tip as it is, I will say that I agree with it, that if you do chop it back, you should get more variegation, just as long as the axillary bud is falling on a piece of that stem that has variegation. Don't quote me on it, it's just my opinion. The last part, or the last tip in the variegation category is more light equals more variegation. I think I'm gonna assemble the pole first before I get it onto or get it potted. Sometimes I like to put the plant on first and secure it so that I can fill it after and like put those roots in, but I'm not really worried about that right now. So I'm just gonna start filling. Anyway, this is again another one that I'm not 100% confident in. I think that the only sort of real observation I've made with variegated plants and light is that it kind of holds on to your variegated leaves a lot longer. Like with my Epipremnum pinnatum albo variegata, I had that one in like super, super bright light. It was in my tent, and then it was in an exo. And then the second that I kind of pulled it away from light, and those the white parts on the leaves were not getting like direct rays from the grow lights, it just started to turn brown, like almost immediately. I definitely make it a priority to, you know, make sure that my variegated plants are getting like basically direct light from the grow lights at least like 6 to 8 hours a day. But in terms of my plants like that I've owned, I haven't really seen a huge correlation between more highly variegated leaves and more light. Like my Florida Beauty, my Frydek, my Epipremnum pinnatum, they all kind of put out the same sort of amount of variegated leaves no matter what light condition I give it. I haven't seen like an increase in variegation on, you know, plants that I put in my tent, which has the strongest light, versus plants that I just have, you know, on like in a low light exo or something. I think it really just depends on the plant. I've heard specifically with like the Paraiso Verde that more light equals more variegation. But then I've also heard from people who have a lot of experience with the Paraiso Verde that it wasn't so much a light thing with them, more so than a warmth and temperature thing. Like warmer temperatures created more variegation, whereas lower temperatures kind of, you know, reduce the variegation a bit. But if this jet skier does not get out of my life, I'm so glad you're having a great time, really. But he's just going back and forth, buzz, 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 and he's just doing donuts. Like, go further away. So for me, I just personally, like, with very minimal research on the topic, I have not noticed that any of my plants have pushed out more or less variegation depending on the light. It's really just depended on, like, I would say the genetics of the plant. Because I feel like I've grown my Frydek pretty much everywhere possible. Like right now it's literally living on my kitchen counter. I've had it living in the tent for a long time. It was living in a high humidity exo, then now it's living in my low humidity exo. I even had it like in my bedroom for like a small tiny stint in time. And it's always just kind of done the thing where it like pushes out a low variegation leaf, and then it'll put out like a highly variegated leaf, and then a low variegation leaf. It's kind of just done what it has always done, no matter what the light situation has been. So my very, very reluctant answer, if you had to like force one out of me, I'm gonna say that I more so agree to disagree with this one, just because it hasn't been my experience. Okay, so I have the pole done, and I did not pack it very tightly at all because I want to be able to like shove those roots in there. And then I think I'm gonna do not only just, I don't think I'm gonna do a lazy strap. I actually think I'm gonna saran wrap this one because of how like delicate these roots are. They are so extremely fuzzy and I don't want them to dry out. So I think the vessel I'm gonna put it in is this guy. And this leca is very dusty, so I'm actually gonna give it a rinse because I don't want all that dust sitting at the bottom of the vessel. I'm just gonna cut this part out because it's very loud. Oh, it's not even that loud. See, this one's less abrasive than the other one. Like, this just falls in like little angels. Whereas the other one is just like clanking. It like breaks my audio. Okay, so what I want to do actually is I think I'm gonna fold these little feet up, and I want to create sort of a, I want to like submerge this into the leca a little bit. Oh, that's actually, no, that's not gonna work. That's like so submerged in there. I want it to be taller. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. It's not the end of the world. Okay, the next topic we are moving into is a topic that I'm definitely more knowledgeable on and have more life experience with. And some of you might guess what this is. Any guesses? Anything? I don't have any fir bark, which kind of sucks, but at the same time, I'm not gonna like leave the house and run over to the store just for some freaking fir bark. But I probably could use more soy or more perlite in this, TBH. I'm gonna add just a tiny bit more perlite. You guys guess what category we're going into next. If you guessed pests, if you guessed pests, wow, it's really hard to say that, you would be correct. We're gonna be talking about pests because pests love me. They love this house. They think I'm a great hostess. And that's just the life that I live. I always feel like I grab everything I need before filming, but then I end up having to get up like 5 million times. and like by the end of the video, I'm just like panting heavily. I have zero endurance. I gotta do this quickly because this is what I was talking about. We have a lot of these really delicate, sensitive roots along the stem that I do not want to dry out, but I am gonna try and start talking about pests. So number one, if you let your plants dry out, all of the fungus gnats will disappear. I have to pretty strongly agree to disagree with this one. Many of you guys will know that I'm a serial underwaterer, and many of my plants perish because I forget to water, but my fungus gnat issue is at like an all-time high. It actually has been pretty high for the last few months. I just, yeah, can't figure them out. I feel like I need to try maybe like a new kind of product because mosquito dunks have worked for me in the past, but they're not working for me this year. And I have even gone the route to allow my plants to dry out. I used to put like a really sort of thick layer of sphagnum moss on the top of my soil plants. I found that the fungus gnats didn't really flock toward the plants that had that layer of moss because it was so dry, and they would just gravitate toward my pond plants or plants that didn't have the moss on top. But that has not even been able to save me now. Maybe for some people, like if your fungus gnat issue isn't super bad, then maybe that works. That's not been my experience. Doesn't matter if my plants are dry or wet, or if it's in pond or leca or soil, the gnats will find it and they will create a home in it. And they've been driving me absolutely crazy. There is nothing worse than like a fungus gnat flying at your face. It's like it has all of this space to go in the apartment. Like, why is it flying at my face? And especially when you're like swatting them away, why do you keep coming back? Like what do you gain from the situation? Like, you clearly see this hand that is physically moving your body away from the object you are trying to land on. Like, just stop. It's so freaking annoying. Like, it literally makes me seethe. That's not good. That stem broke right off. Okay. Well, here's the bottom. I don't know if you guys saw, but I kind of felt like something was a little off. Yeah, it snapped. But it's okay because we've got some roots here. I think instead of just doing straight soil, I'm gonna do a tree fern fiber soil mix, and then we'll just keep rooting it. It's not a huge deal. Yeah, it's gonna be fine. I'm not panicking. Are you panicking? I'm not panicking. So yeah, agree to disagree. Very hard with this one. But hey, if it works for you, I'm happy for you. I wish that was the case for me, but it's not. Using diatomaceous earth for gnats, have also done this before. This was kind of like one of the first things I did in this hobby, like when I was first kind of getting into it and I started noticing gnats. You know, I would go onto like the spruce or like, I don't know, you know those websites that you see when you look up like houseplant care advice, and like across the board it was like DE, use DE for pests. And I was going around just like sprinkling that crap everywhere. I do feel like it helped to a certain degree, but it would never like fully eradicate the problem. I don't think that it hurts to use it, so I'm not gonna like sit here and say like, oh, don't even bother with that stuff, because I definitely have done it before and noticed a slight difference, but it just not enough for me to like take the time to do it again. I would much rather use like one product that I know is more effective than go the DE route. I'm gonna say to a certain extent, yes, I agree with it, but I also do know that like gnats are like one of the most freaking pesky pesky pests out there, and like one of the most annoying. And I kind of find them similar to like spider mites, where they can adapt to like different chemicals that you use and different things that you use to try and get rid of them. And yeah, they're just really pesky and annoying that way. Oh my gosh. It's funny because I wrote all of these things down before Hoya Apocalypse. So this one says boiling water for root mealies. The sounds of boiling water kind of freaks me out. I'm not quite sure I would actually use like legitimate boiling water for my plants in general. Like when I, you know, went through Hoya Apocalypse, I was using water that was 120 degrees Fahrenheit, so it wasn't boiling. Like I could literally touch it without burning my hand, but it was still hot enough for like a lot of my plants to burn and a lot of the roots to burn. So I'm just gonna say agree to disagree with this, just because the sounds of boiling water really freaks me out, especially if you're gonna use it on your roots. If you have something like root mealies, I would suggest something that I've done in the past that actually worked for me really well, and that was doing a root soak in 50-50 water and alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. I know that sounds probably even worse than boiling water in a sense, but it's worked so well for me. I had root mealies on my Hoya paradoxa minor, and it got rid of it in one treatment. I thought it was going to be one of those things where I'd have to do multiple treatments, but it worked after just once. But you know, then there's like situations like Alice where she's been dealing with root mealies on specific plants for like a really long time, and she's done just like a straight alcohol mix. I can't remember if it was her who said that she used freaking nail polish remover. Alice, was that you? If it was, I'm sorry, I'm outing you. I can't remember who. Maybe it wasn't Alice, but it was someone, and this person, maybe Alice, was like, and it didn't even work. Sorry, I'm using all my concentration right now because I'm trying to not snap this new root system up on the top. Pudge, please. I'm realizing you guys are so freaking far away. I'm gonna have to like zoom in. What the heck? You guys are so far, you can't see what I'm doing. Is that a little bit better? Sorry, I've been filming for like an hour. Okay, I don't know why Pudge is barking. Sorry about that. I think I'm going to remove some of these bottom leaves so that I have more stem to work with. I'm not really pressed on, like, you know, keeping all the leaves. I really just want to get this plant established now on a pole. Anyway, I'm gonna say agree to disagree on this one. I just don't like the idea of using boiling water. I think I'm definitely scarred from Hoya Apocalypse for sure. I learned my lesson the hard way. So this one kind of has like a really like curvy stem, and I'm trying to make sure that it's like aligning kind of on the pole so that it doesn't grow sort of off the pole, if that makes sense. I want it to be as centered on here as possible. It'll go like this. I think I snapped one of the roots. That was inevitable with my clunky ass hands, but it's okay. I still have 2 other good roots to work with. I was so scared of that. It's like so delicate. I actually realized I should have done the saran wrap before the tie. God, Sherman, you're off your game today. Not that I'm really ever on my game, but you know what I mean. Okay, so I'm just gonna show you before I get it onto the pole, but or into the pot, but I essentially just wrap those top fuzzy roots in the saran wrap so that it goes into the pole and doesn't dry out. And then I don't want to bury it too low because I want at least these leaves to be sitting above. So I think I'll just do, I could even, is this spider mite damage? What is that? Okay, you're gonna come off too. I think there's spider mite damage on this one. Let me show you. It's not focusing. Or it's having a hard time focusing because the leaf is so dark. Okay, so I think I'm gonna just, yeah, fill now with the substrate because it looks like that's like the best I'll be able to do. I honestly could even move it lower down this pole, but it's okay. The more that I have submerged under the soil, the more moisture is gonna be pulled back up into the pole anyway, so I'm not worried. I'm actually just gonna chop these feet off. I don't usually like chopping it off because then it's harder to do the extensions, but it's not impossible to do the extensions if you don't have the legs. Okay, anyway, my goodness. Let's go into the next one. Using tobacco water for pests. Have I heard this one before? I can't remember if I've heard it before. This is not something that I have any experience with. I don't know. I mean, maybe there are some like properties inside of tobacco that would repel pests. And you know, tobacco is natural, but I'm not sure I mean, it's not like it would smell like a cigarette because it's not like you're burning the tobacco, it's just tobacco water. Let's Google something. Let's Google. I actually haven't even tried to Google this yet. This is an agricultural website. Tobacco brew mixture acts as a potential insecticide in controlling various insect pests. I'm not gonna completely write this off. I can kind of maybe see where this could be like a good thing, but would I try it? I mean, I would try it. Who has tried this? I should ask. Has anybody tried this? I mean, if it's as easy as literally just like removing the tobacco from a cigarette and then soaking it in water and then using that to water, yeah, it doesn't seem very hard, and it's, you know, you wouldn't be releasing any harmful chemicals into the air. As much as I don't know if you guys are, you know, if you watch this channel a lot, you guys know that I don't really go the all natural method as my go-to for pests. Like, the most sort of natural treatment that I do for pest really prevention is showers with castile soap. But if I'm dealing with a full-on outbreak of like thrips, spider mites, whatever, mealy bugs, I'm literally not gonna be like going in there with my soap and water. Like, I'm gonna bring out the big guns, I'm gonna bring out the chemicals. But do I love doing that? No, I don't love the fact that, you know, I'm spraying this stuff inside and it's like, yeah, it's literal freaking chemicals that have warning labels like do not inhale, do not get on skin. It freaks me out. I'm a hypochondriac. So the thought of kind of using something more all natural is definitely appealing to me. I'm not gonna write it off because I have no experience with it. I have no kind of like actual research into it besides what I just did on my phone. So I'm not gonna agree to disagree on this one, but I would love to know if anyone has tried this and if it works, and maybe what are like the pros and cons of it, or like drawbacks that you've noticed with using tobacco as like a all natural insecticide, pesticide. If tobacco really worked, that's something that I could definitely get on board with for sure. Not because I used to be a smoker, but just in general, the thought of using something more natural intrigues me. And before anybody suggests neem to me, I absolutely hate neem oil. I hate neem oil just as much as I hate pests, so I can't do it. I just can't. The smell makes me retch and gag. I don't like the consistency of it. I don't like the way it looks like on the plant. It leaves like a residue. I just do not like neem oil. I know so many people swear by it, but I just can't. Okay, so this is a really, really big pot for the root size. The root size is like 1/8 of what you see here, but I'm just really hoping that we can get like a good root system established. I am going to inoculate it with great white, and I'm going to super watch my watering, and I'm actually going to put this in my tent for a while to kind of rehab and get sort of, you know, its bearings and get sort of established in this pot. So yeah, this one's done. The next plant I'll be working on is the Amanda hybrid. The Amanda philodendron hybrid, I should say, the 69686 hybrid. Also, I've had people ask me what this little thing is that I use to pick up soil. So this was Alice's freaking genius idea. She did it with one of these, I think, when she was either at my house. Yeah, we were doing a collab together and we were working on the table, and she wanted to like scoop up all the soil, and she just started doing this, and I just watched her in absolute awe. I was just like, you are the smartest person I have ever met. It was so mesmerizing because I typically just like use my hands and I just like scoop it all together. But anyway, she got me one of these. This is like for like baking. It's like to get the dough, I think, along the edges of the bowl. I wouldn't know. I don't know jack crap about baking. This one is in tree fern fiber, so I'm just gonna put it straight into this tree fern fiber I already have here. Okay, so yeah, back to the back to the tobacco one. I don't have an answer for that one, but I would love to know any kind of insight that you guys have on it. And then this next one is neem oil. I just told you guys I don't like using neem oil at all. It's the smell for me, primarily the smell, and I just don't love how oily it is. I know that Azamax, I think like the main ingredient in Azamax is neem oil, but for some reason it's not as, to me the smell is not as bad, and neither is like the texture of it, like the oiliness of it. Jeez Louise, this is like really, really in there. Okay, yeah, neem oil is just not for me. I really don't like it. I don't enjoy it. So I wouldn't doubt if it works, just because Azamax Azamax has worked pretty well for me since I've started using it. I do feel like my spider mites are evolving though, and they're just kind of like not caring about what I'm using now. I think at this point, like my last resort is really just killing them with fire, which I'm not opposed to. But yeah, I can't use neem oil, but I'm not gonna sit here and bash it because I know that it works for some people. There's like, you know, I'm sure there are like studies showing the effectiveness of it. Many greenhouses use neem oil as a treatment and preventative. But for me, I'm just gonna say it's not for me, but I'm going to agree that you can use neem oil to ward off pests. And then the other last part in this pest category was using cinnamon to repel fungus gnats. I've actually never used cinnamon as a repellent, like purely as a repellent. I've mostly used it for its like, what is it, like anti-fungal properties. Is it antibacterial or antifungal? Anyway, I mix it into my callousing mix, which is cinnamon powder. God, I just broke that root. Fucking cinnamon powder, rooting powder, and sulfur powder, whatever. That's really the extent of how I use my cinnamon. I don't actually like sprinkle cinnamon into like my substrates to ward off pests. So I can't say for sure if it would work or not. I would imagine maybe they don't like the smell of it. Can fungus gnats smell? Do they have a nose? I don't know. Maybe it's spicy for them. Maybe they don't like the spice. But I've never used it as a repellent, so I really have nothing to contribute in terms of the conversation. But I do love cinnamon. I think it's a magical little gift from, wow, this is really, really EFN-y. Okay, sorry, hold on. I gotta rinse this under some water really quick. It's so sticky. So if I had to give an answer to the cinnamon one, I'm just going to, again, very reluctantly say agree, just because of all of the sort of like anecdotal things I've heard or just like home remedies that I've heard. This kind of makes sense to me, but I've never actually done it myself. So I'm just gonna wipe the leaves down because, again, I rinsed it off with a little bit of soap, pure cast iron soap, to remove some of the EFN, and I do have a bit of spider mites on this. And yeah, I just want to kind of get rid of them. I don't use anything like Dawn dish soap. I just find it to be a little bit too harsh. Okay, so now moving into the last category, which is not really a category. It's sort of the etc. stuff that I didn't know like what to categorize in the categories that I did sort of create. So this first one is there's no such thing as a growing season. I've talked about this before on my channel, where I feel like plants just naturally, to a certain extent, no matter where you're keeping them, living room where it's getting natural light, or if it's in a greenhouse where it's only getting, you know, artificial light and in artificial environments, I feel like, I don't know, they're just connected to the earth in a way that we can't ever comprehend or understand. I feel like they just understand when like we're in certain seasons. Of course, you know, a plant will react very, very strongly to the temperatures year round, how much light is around year round, like how long it's around per day, how quickly the sun goes down, drop in temperatures, just every little thing that happens with the seasons that we observe as like humans, like plants will pick up on that too. But because of like the nature of this hobby and sort of like how really artificial it is, like everything that we're doing is kind of like unnatural in a sense, and the plants are just kind of adapting to what they're given here. So for example, my plants in my plant room are not as like aware of what season we're in compared to my plants out here. I would say that in my plant room, like the only fluctuation throughout the year is probably temperature, because the light is pretty much the same. It's all like pretty much artificial light in there. The only thing that changes that's kind of out of my control is, yeah, the warmth during like the summer and the spring versus like the drop in temps in the fall and winter. So I do think that like my plants pick up on that in the plant room, whereas my plants here, like they're fully aware of like when the sun comes up, when it's moving around during the day, when it goes down, and how long they received light for, like how strong that sun was. So they're very aware of the seasons. So my plants out here, I wouldn't say that they like go completely dormant. I do have very select plants that like just don't really grow at all during the colder months. But for the most part, everything in here is kind of just like growing at a very slow pace. Whereas my plants in my plant room, they just kind of grow throughout the year, and they don't really like relent. They don't really stop the like speed in which they grow, because it's like, oh my God, I keep knocking this thing over. It's basically summer year round, spring, summer year round in my plant room. So in terms of the question though, I'm not going to say that there's no growing season, because there definitely is like a growing season, which is like the warmer months, right? Sorry, my back hurts. I feel like I have this like knot in the center of my back here that I can't get by like trying to crack my back myself. It's very frustrating. Which pot was I? Oh, I was actually going to just pot it in this. I know it's really ugly, but this one is just sitting in my tent right now, so I don't really feel the need to give it like a super nice pot. I'm just really trying to get it going. The question is like, do I want to get this on a pole or no? I feel like it's kind of sizing up pretty decently without a pole, so I'm just gonna say no pole for now and just make this as straightforward as possible. So yeah, there is definitely like a growing season. You can't like deny that that's not a thing. But if we're talking specifically about this hobby in what are mostly, I would say, controlled environments, then yeah, there's not like a very, very distinct growing season. All of my plants are growing like crazy right now because, you know, we're in the thick of spring, about to head into summer. Yeah, things have picked up a little bit, but not so much to the point where I'm like, oh my God, we're in the thick of growing season. You know, all my plants in my plant room are growing kind of at the pace that they have been all year, maybe just a hair faster. Whereas it's very noticeable out here in my living room and in my bedroom that things are growing a little bit faster. So in a sense, yeah, I agree that there is really no such thing as a growing season if you're talking purely in controlled environments. But I agree to disagree to say that in general, there is no such thing as a growing season. Now, I do hear people say this all the time, primarily in Facebook groups, where someone will be asking advice on like ow. I was trying to break this up, thinking it's a soil ball. That's a rock. Like someone will post, oh my gosh, the roots are growing like crazy on this plant, like it's coming out of the pot, like what do I do? Can I repot it right now? And there's a good amount of people that reply that are like, don't touch it. You know, we're in the middle of like winter, like it just don't repot until the growing season, don't repot until spring, or don't repot till summer. And I think like something that you should ask that person before you give any kind of advice is like ask sort of what are the conditions that you're giving it, like where is it living, because they're like under no circumstance really, like if there's a plant that clearly needs to be repotted, like let's say a plant in my plant room that's like growing out of control, I'm not gonna like not repot it just because, you know, we're in the middle of winter. If the plant is growing, you know, it's growing, and if it needs a bigger pot or if it needs a pole extension, I'm gonna give it that. Nothing, it's not gonna stop me just because we're in the middle of winter. But I would not unnecessarily repot a plant that was living in not greenhouse, but like non-controlled environments, if it wasn't absolutely necessary. Like if I was dealing with like root rot or like root mealies, like something where I really do have to get in like the substrate and repot it. Otherwise, I'm probably just gonna leave it alone. I'm much more comfortable fiddling with my plants that are getting controlled conditions year-round than the ones that are not. So it's not like a black and white answer, you know, it really just depends. But yeah, I just hope that as more, I guess, newer people in this hobby, you know, do their research and have more experience, that they're not scared of doing plant things in the winter just because it's winter. You can most definitely, you know, repot and get things going during like the colder months, and a lot of my plants wouldn't look the way they look now if I didn't do something about them, you know, late last year or whatever. Like if I had waited until spring or summer, I think some of them would probably not be looking so great right now. So yeah, just kind of like, I guess, assess each situation. It's not all the same, but I agree that there's no such thing as a very specific growing season in the indoor plant hobby. I feel like anybody could like take that statement and be like, you're wrong, but I feel like you guys kind of know what I'm trying to say. By the way, I am inoculating all of these plants with great white. I don't know if I told you guys that already, but there's great white and TPS1 in my sprayer right now. I'm just kind of getting like, I like using my sprayer after repots like this because then I can like get in all the crevices and like blast away all that soil and perlite that's stuck between that sheath. Anywho, this one is done. Doesn't look really any different, but I am glad I got it into some larger pants. I think that it's going to not dry out as much now, and I'm hoping for a significant leaf size jump, hopefully, now that it's in a bigger pot. I am so freaking nervous about this repot. Oh my gosh, I wish I could just keep it in water forever. But here's the thing, now I know that I can reroot an Elaphoglossum successfully, starting over without losing leaves, without significant shock, and that it does best in water. So we've got that under my belt now in terms of like things I know, but now what I'm learning in this next part is like, how easy is it to transition? What substrate does it like and not like? I feel like in theory you could truly grow plants in anything, as long as you kind of like know what you're doing, you're watching your light and things like that. But I personally find that some plants prefer one substrate over the other. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we're trying to understand each other right now. We don't know much about each other. We're still very new in this relationship. So we're just testing the waters right now. It's kind of like that awkward stage where you're like dating and you're like, what's your favorite color? How many siblings do you have? We're in that territory. So I'm freezing. I don't know why this is so on. It's not even hot. So I'm gonna be repotting it into this vessel here. I have a super chunky pond moss and tree fern fiber mix here that I'm hoping this thing likes. I have no clue what I'm doing here, you guys. I am just kind of taking a stab at the dark and just hoping that this works. So the thing is, with the Elaphoglossum metallicum, the new leaves grow in via like little fronds, very similar to ferns. and, or not similar, exactly like ferns. So I cannot pot this thing super deep. It has to kind of be more so on the surface. It is gonna be a little bit hard to like stabilize these petioles because they are quite heavy. So I might need to use like a chopstick and a clip to keep it in place. Okay, this is not ideal. It's not the nicest thing, but again, this is just in an EXO. It's not like sitting out here or anything. So the white balance always goes crazy when this bowl is in the frame. So I'm gonna get it out of here. Whoa. At least now it's not gonna be so deep. I don't want too much moisture to be sitting on it, and I think that this will, moisture to be sitting in it, and I think this is just going to be a little bit better for this rhizome and the size of this root system because it's not very large. It's still really, really small and just kind of getting going. I could also use rocks to stabilize it, but I also don't want it to be too heavy on this rhizome. It is a super chunky mix though, so I'm not really worried about it like suffocating or anything. It's so chunky and delicious. I've had really good experience using this kind of mix, which is, yeah, chopped up moss, pon, and tree fern fiber. And it just like makes your substrates go a lot further. Where's my clip? So I'm just using this little tiny, if I can, hold on, I'm trying to get it open. This little clip here. And I'm just gonna clip it on. I need to buy more of these clips. I am running very low, and I'm filming a Hoya repot video, hopefully before I leave for California. I'm trying to get some of my thirstier Hoyas into larger vessels so that like it can retain more moisture in it. Otherwise, Nick is gonna have to be here like every 3 days for 2.5 weeks, and I would never ask that of him. Okay, well that is the best that we can do. I kind of liked when it was in this tall vessel because it kind of kept all the leaves upright, but we had to transition it sometime. And again, I should mention that I'm trying to get a lot of these repots out of the way sooner because I really try to not repot anything 3 weeks before a trip because I want to be able to observe everything before I go and not do any last minute ones. The last time that I did that was with my King of Spades because I very last minute wanted to chop it for Amanda. I repotted it when I left very hastily, and then I came back and it had rotted. So at least if I had done that like 3 weeks beforehand, I would have noticed it, you know, yellowing and declining, and I could have done something about it sooner. So anyway, I'm gonna be doing my Gloriosa next just because I'm trying to delay this Burle Marx's flame as much as possible. I'm so nervous about it. So I need to concentrate. I can't really talk about anything while I'm getting this out of here because we're not really sure what to expect. Is this gonna be a difficult repot? Easy? Are we chopping? Are we not chopping? I hope this caterpillar doesn't break in half. Oh my gosh, I have to show you guys this caterpillar. It's like bent in half. Okay, so I'm gonna get it out of here. And I am just gonna be repotting it back into this pot, this guy. Let's get it out of here. I do have leca down at the bottom. Usually a pot like this, where it has leca down here, it usually is pretty easy to just like pop it out. So let's try and do that. Yep. Just as I suspected. Oh, I was supposed to do it in here. Hello, duh. Oh my gosh, I forgot I had a little pot in there to raise it. A little surprise. These roots are beautiful. I love it. I do think I'm gonna have to chop though. This stem is so long. Okay, let's talk about the next thing. The next one, this one is gonna ruffle some feathers, I think. So the tip is that tissue culture plants are bad. This one's so controversial, and for what? There's a huge divide in the community between people who swear tissue culture just produces the worst plants or inferior plants, and then others who say there's like literally no difference. So whenever I think of tissue culture and like botched tissue culture, I always think of two specific plants. Or no, one specific plant, and that's the Rhaphidophora tetrasperma. So I don't know if you guys have seen, I'd be surprised if you haven't seen it, all of these nasty looking Rhaphidophora tetraspermas being sold that just look so sickly, they grow so sickly, they are like pushing out these like very nutrient deficient leaves. They're like, it just looks like it's from the upside down. Like I would not want this in my house. It just has no appeal to me. Whereas, you know, I guess like the non-tissue culture ones or ones from a different tissue culture batch look much better. They look nicer. But it's like, it's not all like that. Like honestly, there are probably so many plants in your collection that you don't even realize are from tissue culture, even if like the seller that you got it from says like not tissue culture. It's everywhere. And I don't know, I've seen Spiritus Sancti, you know, plants that have been grown from tissue culture, non-tissue culture. They all sort of look the same to me. Me personally, I'm not against tissue culture. Tissue culture is great for people like me because I can afford the plants. If I had to solely buy from collectors who were not tissue culturing plants, these were all coming from like their personal collection, whether they were like collected from the wild, whatever. I would not have nearly as many plants as I do now. I'm gonna say that like 99.9 of my plants are tissue culture. I don't know. To me, I'm not against tissue culture. I will say that some people have shown evidence showing that some tissue culture batches are really bad and showing sort of like what the mutations look like that produce not so healthy plants. And you can't disagree with that. Like some of them really do look terrible, but it's not like a one size fits all. It's not to say that like just because this batch of tissue culture plants came out really wonky that like all tissue cultures now are inherently bad. So yeah, I agree to disagree with this one. I think the people who don't like tissue culture are the ones who stand to benefit from, you know, making a profit in this business if you're not tissue culturing. So yeah, agree to disagree with this one. I'm glad that so many plants have gone into tissue culture because peasants like me can afford to actually own them. Okay, so I feel like Moses has parted the Red Sea. Which sea did he part? It kind of looks like we have a very distinct sort of root system at the tail and a distinct root system at the front. So my spidey senses are saying to chop like right here or chop here. I don't want to get too close, but I can kind of see like the perfect little area right here to chop. So that's where we're going to chop. I'm going to still have 4 leaves at the top, and then I'll have 3 leaves down at the bottom. But yeah, let me show you this cataphyll. Can you hold on? Ugh. You know what? I'm gonna use my phone to show you because this is just not working out. Front facing camera, jump scare. Okay, so here is the cataphyll, and look at it. It got bent like so badly. I hope that the new leaf is gonna be okay. I think I might have rescued it soon enough because it doesn't quite look like anything's gonna come out of it yet. And hopefully it kind of sorts itself out, but yeah, this is pretty bad. Okay, I'm chopping, guys. I'm chopping. I'm sorry that this angle is so crappy, but it's so hard to move the camera around. Where did I say I was cutting? Oh, here. Okay. Here is the bottom cutting. Beautiful. And here is the new top cutting, which I'm still very happy about. Now the question is, do I want to pot both of these into one pot, or do I want to just have one plant in one pot? That's the question. I have repotted one gloriosum with multiple plants in it. I think I put 2 plants in there, but there's like 4 growth points for whatever reason. And it's growing a little bit crazy and it's overwhelming me, so maybe I won't put myself in that position again. It might be nice to kind of have a gloriosum maybe out on this shelf or like in my bedroom. So I think I'll pot this one separately and just have a second plant. And then when I don't know, if I ever tire of it or if it grows too large, then I can just sell it. But right now, I think I should keep it as a backup just in case anything happens with this plant. You never freaking know. I'm gonna add some of my calcine powder. Okay, my phone is at 2% and I'm too lazy to get my charger, so let's just plow through the rest of these. There's not many left. Oh, this is one I've never heard this before, but don't touch new plant leaves or they will die. I know that there's a lot of like controversy of like whether you should be helping plants out of the sheath or if you should be helping plants unfurl and stuff like that, but I've never actually heard of the one where it's, you know, I've never actually heard anyone say that like your whole plant will die if you touch the leaf. That seems a bit much. I will say like one thing about touching leaves when, you know, they're brand new is that they do kind of like register everything. It's like think of a new leaf as like having just cameras all around the surface of it. Anything you do, any slight movement or touch or graze, it can like register that. They're so fragile, they're so delicate. It's basically like you're imprinting on them as they're sort of hardening off. Even the slightest graze can end up being like a really distinct mark once it's fully hardened. But I have never, ever once experienced a new leaf just completely dying by touching it. That's completely, I have never heard of that before from anyone. That's never been my experience. I'm not really sure who's been saying that, but I have to pretty strongly agree to disagree. I'm not advocating for this, like you really should be leaving your new leaves alone, but I highly agree to disagree that that's not the case. If your plant has cosmetic issues, it's a humidity issue. That's a pretty big blanket statement, and off the bat I'm gonna say agree to disagree right away. I don't know what I'm doing here. Oh my gosh, Sherman, get it together. Okay, so here's my vessel. I'm gonna put some leca down at the bottom. See how like the weird shapes of them create these like much larger air pockets in it than like the normal leca? I love it, I'm obsessed. So yeah, cosmetic issues can be caused by a numerous amount of things, and I think if you're in this hobby long enough, you don't need any scholarly article to confirm that with you, or any study to confirm that with you. You can have cosmetic issues from overwatering, underwatering, over-fertilizing, under-fertilizing, too much humidity, not enough humidity, irregular watering. So many different things can contribute to cosmetic issues. Too much light, not enough light, blah, blah, blah. So I do find that like many hobbyists tend to put a lot of focus on humidity, and I think it's because, you know, naturally when you think of these plants in their native habitats, yeah, they're going to come from a more humid area, but there's so much more to like the success of growing them indoors outside of their native habitat that's not humidity related. It tends, and this is just my observation from what I read in Facebook groups, and honestly the only reason that I'm really in the amount of Facebook groups that I'm in now is for one, for information, and two, I really love kind of seeing what people are saying out there, advice that people give, and just kind of what the trend is in terms of like advice or like trending plants and stuff. Like you can collect a lot of information just by reading comment threads, and honestly every night if I'm not reading a book or I'm not on TikTok, I'm on these Facebook groups just reading through comments. And even if it's like a post where I very clearly know that like the issue that they're having is like thrifts or something, I still read the comments because I want to know what people are saying. I don't need any confirmation if I know 100% what it is, but I love to know like, you know, what the back and forth conversation is, and like, I don't know, I just find it really interesting. It's kind of like people watching. Anyway, why was I talking about this? Oh yeah, I feel like one of the blanket fixes in terms of when people are asking for help with a plant, it's usually like humidity, give it more humidity. It needs humidity, and sometimes that is the issue. I'm not going to say it's not. Plants, like a lot of the plants we own, most definitely enjoy higher humidity. Sorry, I might disappear for a little bit, but I'm back here somewhere. Oh, it's a little bit too much. I need to go deeper. I didn't realize the root system was so big, or I forgot. Sometimes humidity is the issue, but I do find that tends to be like many people's number one fix or like advice when someone is asking for help when like a leaf is going out or a leaf is dying or yellowing or something. But yeah, the truth is it can be so many other factors, like so many other factors. I'd even like say like hundreds of factors. And if you're thinking I'm crazy, like, you know, did you recently chop the plant? Did you recently fertilize the plant? Did you recently repot it? Have you moved it to a different room? Have you had any pests lately? There's so many questions that you can ask, or there's so many things that someone can do to a plant that can cause it to decline. So yeah, for someone to just like confidently say, oh, it's a humidity issue 100%, it's really not as simple as that, unfortunately. Not that I want it to be more complicated. I would love if this plant hobby could be more black and white sometimes. I think many of my plants would look a lot better if it was more black and white and as simple as that, but it's not. And I think even if you've only been in this hobby for like a year or 2 or 3 or whatever, you probably know that by now too. So this one is a hard disagree. I would never accept this as like legitimate advice that like any cosmetic issue is 100% caused by a lack of humidity or like too much humidity. Okay, let's keep going. Don't cut off yellow / crispy leaves, and then I made a note to talk about mobile nutrients. This is something that I think you have to assess on a case-by-case or plant-by-plant basis. I always try and like give you guys a good analogy because I understand things like this in a form of, you know, like a analogy that like a 5th grader could understand. Assume, why did I say assume? Think of your entire plant as like a household, or like a marriage or a household. It's like every part of the plant has a role that they play that contributes to the well-being of the entire plant. And one of those things is obviously your plant is going to house and hold nutrients and store nutrients. Now, I'm not going to talk about it now, but there is a thing called mobile and immobile nutrients. And I can't remember which video I talked about this in. Maybe it was like part 1 or 2 of this video. But there are certain types of nutrients which can move through a plant, and there are some that cannot. So when a leaf is dying off, like when you notice that the oldest leaf is dying off, those mobile nutrients are moving from that dying leaf into the rest of the plant. And that's just kind of how it keeps like its little ecosystem. And so yeah, it's interesting, like if a plant is, if you're noticing that your old leaf is dying off, that's kind of just like the natural progression of, you know, how plants grow. Or even if something is going wrong with the plant, let's say that like you recently repotted it and it's going through transplant shock, most of the time you're going to notice the older leaves will start to show more stress faster than the newer ones. And I think that's just kind of the way that like it naturally preserves like its life so that it has a stronger chance to survive. You know, it just kind of almost sacrifices those old leaves first so that it has a better chance of, you know, surviving whatever it's going through. So if you're noticing that, yeah, like a new leaf is coming in and your old leaf is going out, to me, when I see that, that's not a cause of concern for me. For me, that's super normal. A time where I would be concerned about a yellowing leaf is if it was multiple lower leaves at once, because normally that's not super common with a plant that's pushing out a new leaf. It's not usually going to take like 4 or 5 leaves just to push out a new leaf. 1 or 2 leaves kind of makes more sense. And then another reason I would be concerned is if like there was yellowing on a brand new leaf. That to me signals that there's something else going on with the plant that's not just sort of aging normally. So going back to the original tip of like don't cut off your leaves that are perfectly healthy or that are yellowing, I tend to follow that advice. I want any nutrients that leaf is storing, I want any of those mobile nutrients to move back into the rest of the plant. That's just kind of like its natural process. I don't want to interrupt it. And I've had an experience with this pretty recently. I've found that like on, let's say, a trouble plant or a plant that has just suddenly gone dormant for no apparent reason at all, that, ow. And this has been true for my glorious, that if you have like a plant that has like all these leaves and it's just dormant, whereas before, like that's not normal for the plant. It's almost like the plant is using all of its energy and its resources in preserving the leaves that it already has. But when you cut the leaves off and the plant no longer is like stressed about like, you know, trying to keep all these leaves nice and green and healthy, it just works on a new leaf. It either works on new roots or it works on a new leaf. And this was true for my glorious, like I said. So this one was one of like my most robust growers, my most vigorous growers. What do I want to do here? Sorry, I'm like trying to talk and concentrate at the same time. I think I need one of my clips again. Sorry, going back to what I was saying. So in some cases, you'll notice that a plant is actually using more resources and more energy just trying to preserve the leaves that it already has, especially I would say if they're like large leaves. So you'll find that if you just chop those leaves off, like if you're really trying to get the plant going again, or really trying to get the plant growing again anyway, that once you chop those leaves off the plant, or at least have less leaves than it currently has, you'll maybe find that that new growth point will suddenly wake up. So going back to my glorious, like I mentioned, I had my glorious, which was a super, super robust grower. It was one of my fastest growers in my collection. And then all of a sudden it just went dormant. I did have these nice big leaves on it. And I'm like, you know, going off the rule of thumb that I had, you know, followed pretty much all throughout my time in this hobby, I'm like, I'm not going to chop off perfectly healthy leaves that have nutrients in it that can contribute to the rest of the plant. But my friend Amanda was like, chop those leaves off. And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like so big and beautiful. Like they'll still contribute to the plant. She's like, trust me, chop the leaves off. And I chopped the leaves off. I listened to her. Seriously, anything Amanda says, I'm like, yes, ma'am. So I chopped the leaves off, and literally like a couple days later, that new caterpillar started swelling. And then sure enough, another leaf pushed out. So then I did it to my other glorious because I had the top cut and then I had the mid cut, chopped that leaf off on the other one. A couple days later, caterpillar started swelling. So now I'm like, what even is real? So I think it really just depends. Just kind of knowing the right time to chop a leaf off. But my rule of thumb still is like, if the leaf is just naturally yellowing, especially if I can start to see a new growth coming in, I'll just leave it because I know they're kind of doing its thing. I don't want to disrupt it. But I do have plants like out here in the living room where like if I see a yellow leaf and it's bothering me, I'll just chop it. I don't care. I just don't want to see it. So what was the tip again? Oh yeah, so it says don't cut off yellow slash crispy leaves. I'm just gonna say it's preference, and I think it just depends on what your goal for the plant is. I don't think that like cutting off plants typically will like kill your plant. If anything, you're just like chopping off all those, you know, whatever mobile nutrients were in that leaf. But if you're like regularly fertilizing, I don't really see a huge issue with it. I'm not super against chopping leaves off, and I know there are some people who are just like super against it, and they're just like, I don't get why, you know, you would chop a perfectly good leaf off or perfectly good roots off, whatever. But I'm just not the type of person that is gonna try and hold on to every single leaf just because, you know, I don't know. I think you guys know what I mean. Sorry, I'm having a hard time focusing now because I'm wondering if I repotted this correctly. I'm feeling pretty okay about this transition. I'm hoping that it doesn't get shocked too much. I am gonna re-inoculate it. I still have a decent root system. I did mix a little tiny bit of tree fern fiber into this mix, so feeling pretty okay. So fingers crossed. Okay, now I need to pot this smaller cutting. There's only 3 points left, so the third to last one is dip cuttings in cinnamon to prevent root rot. There was actually a discussion about this in a Facebook group recently, and people got like so riled up in the comments. But the reason that I like to read that was because a lot of people did attach like scholarly articles and studies and stuff like that, and it was really interesting because I do use, I think I put too much leca. Girl, are you okay? Yeah, I do use cinnamon in my callousing mix just because, like, from everything I've read about, I can't reach, oh my gosh, I'm shaking my camera. Someone wrote, I feel like the 4-hour video is your equivalent of hitting the sound barrier. That is hilarious. If you guys didn't know, I posted a 4-hour week of plant to-dos in May, and it was freaking wild. My computer hated me. This is not going to be able to live here for very long, but we're just going to put it in here anyway and just YOLO and see what happens. So yeah, I use cinnamon in my rooting hormone just because I've, you know, read that it's an antifungal, and like people use it for like natural remedies all the time. So I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't it work for plants? I have not had any sort of like drawback, or I have not encountered really any drawback to using cinnamon. I think if I had, I definitely would not still be using it. Some people just say it's, you know, it's woo-woo stuff, like, oh yeah, it's one of those all-natural DIY things that don't actually have any scientific backing or like doesn't work. But you know what? If at the very minimum it makes my plants smell good, that is enough for me. I love the smell of cinnamon. It has not killed any of my plants. I have a lot of plants that I've used cinnamon with that are doing amazing, and you can't tell me otherwise. So, this one's gonna need probably a chopstick too. Or I could just have it lean like that. Yeah, let's just do that, because I think if I put this on my shelf, I'm gonna need it to kind of lean a little bit, not just stick straight up. Obviously, I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh yeah, 100% cinnamon works for, you know, rooting and preventing rot and stuff like that, because I don't have any like scientific proof to like give you guys besides what you can find online, or I've not conducted anything myself where I can confidently say that. But I have used it for that purpose, have not had any bad drawbacks or had any bad consequences that have come with that. So if someone asked me if I should use it, I'd probably say yeah. I feel like I have to pot it deeper. I've been filming for like 5 hours. I said this video wasn't going to be long, and now I don't even have time to film this video I was going to film after this. Yeah, let's just like not overthink this and just follow our heart. I think it'll be cute. I can just like put it up here for now. So for the cinnamon one, I'm gonna say agree. I think you should dip your cuttings in cinnamon. I mean, even if it makes me sound all like newbie or whatever, I don't care. Works for me, smells good. I have no issue with it. Don't propagate in winter. I think the reason that this advice is given is because in general your plants are just not as strong as they are in like the warmer months, at least your plants that are not in like greenhouses or whatever. So like I get it, like you don't want to stress out a plant that's kind of just like trying to survive and make it through, you know? So I would say if a plant is clearly not dormant, if it's clearly growing, it's happy, I would not have any problems taking propagations like that in the winter. But if I was dealing with a plant that most definitely has slowed down in growth over the winter, I'm not going to unnecessarily propagate it if I don't have to. I'm not going to unnecessarily repot it. I'm not going to chop it. I'm not going to do really anything to it. I'm not going to like crazy fertilize it. I'm just going to let it sort of ride out the winter and let it do its thing. So I think if this advice was worded in a way where it's like don't propagate dormant plants over the winter, I would say yeah, that's less risky, but I wouldn't just in general say don't propagate over the winter. So I'm gonna say disagree for that one. Agree to disagree. This is the last plant and I'm hoping for a successful transplant. I'm so scared. And I'm so glad I'm wrapping this video up because I'm tired of hearing my own voice. I've been at this for way too long. Okay, so the last one is put plants outside for the summer to grow better. I wish that I had more experience with this, but I don't, and that's because I don't grow plants outside. I didn't even grow plants outside when I was living in California. I know that my friend, he swears by putting your Dean McDowell outside for the summer to get like really, really nice big leaves. And he does have a really big, nice, beautiful Dean McDowell, much nicer than the plant that I've been able to grow. And he lives in Canada. And yeah, he just says, put your Dean outside for summer. I just cannot get myself to do it. I really can't. I put my freaking Euphorbia trigona outside for 2 days. After 2 days, it got completely scorched. It got mushy. Luckily, I was able to save it when I did, but I had to chop so much of it off, which was fine because I was getting a little bit overwhelmed by the size. Like I feel like I needed to par it down a little bit. I just didn't want to do it forcefully. Like I didn't want that to be the reason why I did it, but you know, whatever. Do what you have to do. So anyways, I tried growing that outside. I was like, oh, it's gonna love it. It's gonna love being in the sun, blah, blah, blah. Nope, it hated it. And I was gonna try and bring that thing over to my mom because like they're getting their garden started and they're doing like a desert landscaping, not like big lush trees. Like they're doing cacti and euphorbia, succulents, a lot of like arid plants, which I think is gonna be super cool. I was like, that would be so sick if you can grow this euphorbia in your backyard and like give it its best life. But now I'm like, maybe that's not a good idea. I'm just like spitting out thoughts here, but I just assume that really any plant would probably prefer natural sunlight over artificial light and would probably grow faster, you know, if you were able to give it like that optimal natural sunlight instead of, you know, these grow lights. So I would assume that if your plants are getting that kind of light and are able to photosynthesize like crazy, you know, outside, I see why that would be optimal for plant growth. But at the same time, I think that like it comes with maybe a bit of transition. I don't know if it's as easy as just like plopping it outside, because that's what I tried to do for my euphorbia and it didn't work. But just saying, I would assume that if you did grow it outside, it probably would grow really, really well and really fast and really big and strong and beautiful. But I have no experience in that department, but my assumption is that I agree, like put your plants out for the summer and you know, enjoy that robust growth. But is it something that I would ever do? No. Just because I agree with it doesn't mean I would do it. or recommend it for that matter. I'm getting this one on a clear moss pole from Lauren again in the size small. And I do think that this one's gonna fit pretty nicely into this pot. I don't wanna pack it too tight. I think I don't know if I mentioned this in the beginning, I think I'm gonna do like a tree fern fiber soil mix rather than just pure soil. And I want to secure this onto the pole first, I think. What I'm thinking is, so new leaf is gonna come out of here. My guess, I know this aerial root is here, but I don't think I'm gonna try and grow it like that. I think I'm having some difficulty sorting this out. I don't know. I think it's gonna start crawling around along here rather than here. That's what I'm assuming. I guess we'll just have to see. I've actually never been confused about that before. What the heck? I'm confused. Why am I confused? So what I'm gonna do is this like really pond heavy tree fern fiber mix. I'm gonna do soil and I'm gonna do tree fern fiber. This is probably a little bit more than I need. Okay, now to secure the bag. I think it's gonna go this way. That's just my guess. I truly am so baffled at why I'm confused about this. But there's like a part of me that's like, what if it's this way? Except my leaves are now facing the other way. I'm gonna go with my spidey sense and say this way. I'm sorry if some of you guys are screaming at the screen saying, stop what you're doing immediately or I'm gonna arrest you. But we'll find out, you know, go around and find out. If I see that it starts like, you know, pushing aerial roots out the other side, I'll just unpot it and flip it around, I guess, but it's not ideal, of course. I don't know, something is telling me this is freaking backwards. I don't know why this looks so different to me than like a regular monstera stem. I truly am baffled at why I'm so confused. Got a really, really nice aerial root that is serving as our foundation of this plant. Part of me is telling me to just chop these things off. I'm gonna have no more poles with legs anymore because I keep chopping them off. I kind of wish these poles were made with little pockets that you can fold it and just like stick it into. I guess I could like cut a hole, but you guys know what I mean. Like a little pocket to tuck it in when you don't need it. So you don't have to chop it off. Anywho, I think it'll fit into this vessel nicer now. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. This is our journey. This is where we are. This is where the road took us. And now we're just gonna follow our heart and our dreams. And if this is backwards, I'm gonna scream and I'm gonna choke myself. I'm so glad I got this done though. I was like counting down the weeks till I leave. I'm like, I gotta get this burle marx flame out of here. And I just keep like going, oh, maybe next week, maybe tomorrow. Cause I'm like scared that I'm gonna do more harm than good. But at least I'll have some time to observe it and watch it, see how it does. But honestly, I think it's gonna be just fine. I've heard this plant can be really finicky, but then some people have said it's like you set it and forget it. I'm hoping that's the case with me. I don't have enough experience under my belt to be like, oh yeah, this is a really easy plant. Because I've owned it for like 2 seconds, so. I am really anxious to see if this new leaf comes out before I go. If it does not, I'm not gonna be well. It's all I'm gonna be thinking about on my trip. So I hope that this leaf comes out before I go. It would be such a nice little treat before vacation. If not, I'm gonna have to tell Nick to like send me a photo of it if it's coming out while I'm away. Why are you so wobbly? But can we all just say a little prayer for this little plant and just hope that it does not undergo any like transplant shock or anything, and that it just like says, hey, thank you for that. I love it very much. I'm gonna grow really well for you now. And then we live happily ever after. Oh my gosh, I still have one more plant to pot. I forgot about my sweet little micans. I think for the micans, I'm gonna opt for a vessel with no drainage and not clear. We're gonna risk it. I wanted to get this into a clear pot, but I don't actually have anything right now. And I would pot it directly into this because I like this pot more, but there's a drainage hole. So that's not gonna work. I feel like I'm probably not gonna untangle this root ball too much if there's a lot of core in it. Coral. Ooh, these roots are delectable. Delectable and delightful. It's falling off pretty easily. It's like a very peat mossy, husky mix. Oh, it's actually quite nice. Oh, my. That, what on God's green earth am I looking at? Sorry, give me a second. I think this is stem. That's not a root. It's like unphotosynthesized stem. Really weird. What the hecky, Becky? Look at that. That scared the crap out of me. They look like white snakes, but yeah, it's like the stem that has no chlorophyll in it. But I'm actually surprised at like how happy those roots are considering I let it dry out so much. Should I try and untangle this more? Am I gonna regret that? Yeah, I already regret it. Charmaine, in life gives you lemons, just leave it alone. You know, I regret that already. I regret it. I regret all of it. What even is happening here? Okay, should have just left it though. I wish I could just reverse Control Alt Delete. No. Okay, let's just pot it. You know what? We're gonna pot it and then untangle because it's hard to do it when they're just flopping around. Anyway, since I have nothing else to talk about, I just finished the Yellow Jackets season 2 finale. Okay, let's not do that. I'm shook, okay? When I tell you that show has me in an absolute chokehold, I'm not joking. There are some shows that just have a vibe to it that it just makes me feel, I don't know. Certain shows have vibes that I vibe with more. And that's one of them. It's just one of those shows. It just gets me like so excited and like so pumped for a new show or a new episode. And I love it. I love it so much. I'm already so anxious for season 3. Apparently they're scheduled or they're planning to do 5 seasons. They've already renewed for season 3, but who knows how long that's gonna take to come out. I am also holding my breath for, what's that one with Zendaya? That one was really good too. Oh. It's a 4-letter word, I think. Dune. Okay, you're done. I'm gonna chop this plant a little bit though, just because she's looking a little leggy. I know some people might like the way this looks, but to me, I just have the best luck getting a nice full micans when I'm chopping back regularly. I need to get this untangled first because it's giving me the freaking ick. Another show that I'm watching that we just kind of started, sort of, is Love and Death with Elizabeth Olsen. Oh, I can't get over how much I love her as an actress. Like, she is incredible. Okay, I know you can't see anything, but I'm gonna just be chopping away here. If this micans gets as full and lush as my other one, I'm gonna have micans coming out of my ears at this point. But you know, if there's any plant that I would hoard, micans. So beautiful. I don't care like how common they've become. This is a absolute freaking favorite of mine. I just need all the leaves to kind of figure itself out again. Some of them are like not facing the right way. But I do find that like the micans kind of gets reestablished pretty fast, because I shower my big micans weekly and I really like mix things up. It gets all tangled, it gets all crazy, but then after a few days they all just sort of like figure it out. So sorry, I'm trying to use this white wall to show you guys because it's kind of hard to see, but she is done in new soil. I hope that she enjoys life in her new pants, because that other pot was not giving or serving. So this is the end of the road for us. Well, it's been a journey. I feel like this one wasn't as sort of like info heavy as part 1 and part 2, because I really tried to put the bulk of, you know, those topics in part 1 and 2, and part 3 was kind of just like the excess stuff. So anywho, probably not like a terrible thing that it took me so long to put out this video, but sorry if anyone's been waiting for it. To be fair, not a single person has asked me where part 3 is, at least I don't think. But here it is. If you've been waiting, I hope you enjoyed it. Would love to know your thoughts. And please don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you liked it, because it helps us a lot on YouTube. Please say a little prayer for the plants that I repotted today, especially my burle Marx's flame. That one needs extra love, and I'm just gonna watching it like a hawk for the next few weeks. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in to another video. Thank you for being here as usual. I appreciate you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.